Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the synthesis of yoga with our beloved Ranga. We are in the sacrifice and the Lord of the sacrifice in the yoga of divine works, beginning with the sentence, "And yet there is not only in him or before him this eternal, self-aware existence."
We read the para. And yet there is not only in him or before him this eternal self-aware existence, this spiritual consciousness, this infinity of self-illumined force, this timeless and endless beatitude. There is too, constant also to his experience, this universe in measurable space and time, some kind perhaps of a boundless finite, and in it all is transient, limited, fragmentary, plural, ignorant, exposed to disharmony and suffering, seeking vaguely for some unrealized yet inherent harmony of oneness, unconscious or half-conscious, or even when most conscious, still tied to the original ignorance and inconscience. He is not always in a trance of peace or bliss, and even if he were, it would be no solution, for he knows that this would still be going on outside him and yet within some larger self of him, as if forever. At times, these two states of his spirit seem to exist for him alternately, according to his state of consciousness. At others, they are there as two parts of his being, disparate, and to be reconciled, two halves, an upper and a lower, or an inner and an outer half of his existence. He finds soon that this separation in his consciousness has an immense liberative power, for by it he is no longer bound to the ignorance, the inconscience. It no longer appears to him the very nature of himself and things, but an illusion which can be overcome, or at least a temporary wrong self-experience, Maya. It is tempting to regard it as only a contradiction of the divine, an incomprehensible mystery play, mask or travesty of the infinite. And so it irresistibly seems to his experience at times. On one side, the luminous verity of Brahman, on the other, a dark illusion of Maya. But something in him will not allow him to cut existence thus permanently in two, and looking more closely, he discovers that in this half-light or darkness too is the eternal. It is the Brahman who is here with his face of Maya. Okay. So he has spoken about it earlier, that there are these four experiences: Sat, Chit, Shakti and bliss. So he is repeating that here. And yet there is not only in him or before him. So in him is the individual experience, and before him is the either in the universe or in the transcendent. This infinite, before him, this eternal self-aware existence. So he is using the word existence for the substance which is subtlest. Then the same substance which comes down to level 2 in the spiritual planes of consciousness, he calls it sometimes being. Okay? And sometimes substance, subtle substance. When it comes down into level 1, it becomes matter. Gross matter, subtlest matter. So when he uses existence, it means the subtlest matter. Substance or being, he uses for this one, the middle. And the lowest one is matter. Okay? So, this spiritual, so before him the eternal self-aware exists. Note, this substance is self-aware. It's a substance which is conscious of itself. A stone is not conscious of itself. But we can see our body is matter, but there is life in it, and it is beginning to become conscious of itself. There is a body consciousness. No? And the best example of that is it repairs itself. When there is a cut, it immediately seals it. Its blood coagulates and seals. So it is conscious. It also knows when it is hungry, it asks for food. It knows when things have to be rejected, when it has to eat. If there is something stuck in the throat, it coughs and sneezes. This is all, we think it is natural, but it is a mechanism. It's a consciousness in the body. So when it keeps going up, this substance becomes more and more conscious, more and more conscious. It seems to be unconscious in matter, but there is a consciousness hiding there. Okay, so that is self-aware existence. Then there is a spiritual consciousness. Okay, then there is infinity of self-illumined force. Sat Chit Shakti Ananda. Force is also there. And this force is self-illumined. It is knowledgeable. It is conscious. At the highest level it is conscious. When it comes down here, it becomes mechanical unconscious force. The wind blowing, the sunlight coming, the river flowing, unconscious, seems to be unconscious. But there is a consciousness hiding behind the apparent outer form. Okay? So, this timeless and endless beatitude. So these things are there, he is experiencing all this. There is too, constant also to his experience, this universe in measurable space and time. So, in other words, on the one hand, he is seeing the reality, spiritual reality. On the other side, he has a body, he has senses, he is seeing the physical world. Okay? So that's what he is saying. There is too this constant also to his experience, this universe in measurable space and time. Level 1, space and time. Some kind perhaps of boundless finite, and in it all is, now this is a beautiful definition of the physical world.
But it sounds like a paradox. Boundless finite.
Yeah, that's one. And then all the adjectives he's putting in the next line is a perfect definition of matter. Okay. All is transient, number 1. Nothing is fixed. Limited. No sense of infinity there. Then fragmentary, broken up, many. Okay. Plural. So he is using fragmentary and plural. Now plural, what's the difference? Fragmentary and plural. Fragmentary, there are dogs, cats, there is mangoes, fruits, apples. Fragmentary. But plural, there are many types of mangoes, there are many types of cats. It's very interesting the way he is describing.
Yes.
See? Otherwise you would say, oh, they're the same. Okay, so ignorant. We don't see the reality. Exposed to disharmony and suffering. Seeking vaguely for some unrealized yet inherent harmony of oneness. Unconscious or half conscious, or even when most conscious, still tied to the original ignorance and inconscience. Perfect description of the physical world. So on the one side, he is experiencing existence, consciousness, force, and a bliss. And the other side, this one. Now he is making a comparison between the two. Okay, so he is not always in a trance of peace or bliss, and even if he were, it would be no solution. What is the solution? The harmony of the two. For he knows that this would still be going on outside him, and yet within some larger self of him, as if forever. What he means is that the ascetic is denying the physical world. But he wants to harmonize the two, marry the soil to the sky. So he is saying that if he is in a trance, then and he is in peace and he is experiencing the Satchidananda. But the world doesn't exist for him then. Okay? So he is saying that he knows that even if he is there, this is still continuing. If the ascetic says, I don't want this, what difference does it make to the Brahman? You can say, I don't want, but I will continue to exist. That's what is the implication here. He has said that in another place quite clearly. It makes no difference to the Brahman whether you accept him or not. The world is existing. The ascetic is saying, this doesn't exist. But it continues to exist. That's what he's saying. So, in other words, the integral yogi cannot ignore this world which continues to exist even when you see it as false. That's what is meaning. So I have to account for it, and I cannot anymore say that it is non-existent. I have to find a solution and find out how it is existing even in spite of my seeing it as unreal. So he looks further and then he sees that behind the forms there is a divine presence in the physical world, which the Mayavadan and the Buddhists missed. They are seeing only the outer forms and saying, not real, illusion. But behind the illusion, there is subtler, a divine presence always there. That's what he will tell you now. Okay? So he has said that very clearly in another place. Okay? He is not always in a trance of peace or bliss, and even if he were, it would be no solution, for he knows that this would still be going on. This would still be going on outside him, and yet within some larger self of him, as if forever. At times, these two states of his spirit seem to exist for him alternately according to his state of consciousness. Now, this needs a little explanation. When we are at level 1, we are seeing only the physical world. We are not conscious of level 2 and level 3. But when you are in the spiritual experience of level 2, when you have silenced your mind and you are there, sometimes you are there, sometimes you are here. Sometimes you are there, sometimes you are here. But the Mayavadin and the Buddhists are rejecting the physical world. But I can't reject the physical world, says the integral yogi, because it exists forever. How can I ignore it? Even if it's an illusion, it is existing. So I have to find a solution for it. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, it is. At times, these two, but I have to say, third level, you go to third level, now everything is harmonized. In level 2, consciousness and force seem to be separate. Spirit and matter, both are there. You are seeing both, but they are in relation also. But they are separate. Third level, they are not separate, they are one. Okay? So very clear, this level, 3 levels. So, for he knows that this will still be going on outside him, and yet within some larger self of him, as if forever. At times, these two states of his spirit seem to exist for him alternately, sometimes here, according to his state of consciousness. At others, they are there as two parts of his being, disparate and to be reconciled, two halves, an upper and a lower, or an inner and an outer half of his existence. Now that's also interesting. He's saying you can consider it upper and lower, or you can consider it as inner and outer. So why is he saying this? Because our idea of up and down is absolutely illusory. Okay? In the physical world, I say up is here. What about the man standing at the other pole of the earth? Which is the up for him? Is it down for him? So it's a very relative statement. So that's why he's saying you can consider it this way, or you can consider it this way. Okay? So to be reconciled, two halves, an upper and a lower, or an inner and an outer half of his existence. It's useful to think of it as vertical. It's also useful to think of it as horizontal. In fact, he says that there are 3 levels here: the physical world, the subtle world, and the causal world. But here also inside, there is a surface being, there is an intraconscient, and there is a psychic, even behind them. There also there are 3 levels. Okay? Today we were reading in another class, and this he makes it very clear in Life Divine.
So the psychic is behind the others.
Yeah, the psychic is behind the intraconscient. The physical body-mind life is level 1, surface being. Then, if you manage to go into your intraconscient, there's an inner mind, inner vital, inner physical, which is the subtle physical, and this is far more knowledgeable than your outer mind, outer vital, and outer body. So it's very good. When you go there, you can develop clairvoyance, clairaudience, all these powers you can develop. But even deeper is a psychic being, in which there is hardly any error. In the intraconscient, there can be error. Although your knowledge increases 10 times, there can be an error. You can make mistakes of judgment. Rare, but it can do. But the psychic being never makes a mistake. If the psychic comes forward, it's inherent knowledge. There is no mind, mental consciousness, but it knows exactly what to do, what to reject, what to accept. Okay? So here he is saying that. Okay? Then he finds soon that this separation in his consciousness has an immense liberating power, liberative power. That means to say, when you are in these spiritual planes of consciousness, okay, you are normally this is referred to it as Purusha Prakriti. Purusha is the spiritual consciousness, if you want, and Prakriti is the spirit and matter. You see them both existing, but they are together always, but separate. In the highest, they are not separate at all. They are together, but one. So, there is a gradation. Disparate and yet to be reconciled. The reconciliation comes at level 3. The supermind. 2 halves, an upper and a lower and inner, that we read. He finds soon that this separation in his consciousness has an immense liberative power. What is meant by liberative? You are not subject to outer nature, you are not subject to ego, you are not subject to the senses. You are completely free. Your consciousness has come out of the body-mind life. Okay? Liberation. For by it, he is no longer bound to the ignorance, the inconscience. It no longer appears to him the very nature of himself and things, but an illusion which can be overcome, or at least a temporary wrong self-experience, Maya. So, at our level, we think that this is me. But when you are in this spiritual consciousness, you don't make that mistake. It's no more, this body is not me. I am pure consciousness. Okay? I am pure consciousness. So, very nature of himself. It no longer appears to him, very nature of himself, which it appears when you are in the physical world and things. But an illusion which can be overcome. Now, the illusion which cannot be overcome is the idea of Buddhism and Mayavada. The illusion is illusion. You cannot escape it. But still they say it can be overcome. The illusion can be overcome and you can see the reality here. That's what it means. Okay, so which can be overcome, or maybe he is meaning the other thing. That means you can escape from the illusion and go up. It can be overcome. In that also could be there. Both meanings stand.
So if it's possible, even these great minds like Buddhas couldn't see it?
Buddha may have, but not Buddhism.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Buddha may have seen, because he refused to go into philosophy. He says, be practical. The problem is one of suffering. So when you make your mind silent, you have escaped the suffering. You have come there, finished, your problem is solved. Mr. Ranganath says, fine for the individual, but what about the rest of humanity? So, for the rest of humanity, this going into the spiritual plane of consciousness is an individual solution, valid for him alone. But I want something much more, Sri Ranganath says. I want entire mankind to get rid of it at some point or other. So what can I do? I'll bring down the supermind, which will take the evolution one step more further. So that will help everybody. And the chance for going into the spiritual planes of consciousness will increase for everybody. It will increase. That's why he spent all his time after 1926, 26, 36, 46, 50, 24 years. He spent pulling down the supermind. He withdrew. He didn't see anybody after that. Very few. Once he saw Dilip Kumar Roy. Once he met that French representative who came when India became free. The French got nervous because the British have left and the entire, what is it called, the colonization, the colonial period is going to now collapse. And so if we hold on to our colonies, we'll be looked down as criminals. So they got a little frightened. So he came to negotiate. So he came first to Pondicherry and discussed with Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Nehru got very annoyed.
Ooh.
You are going there to talk what for? We are the government of India. Why didn't you come to us? So that was the time when Sri Aurobindo, his mind is, he is nationalistic, but he is also international. He is not limited to only nationalism. So he wanted Pondicherry to have a status of a international look. And that's happened. Horrible.
Yeah.
It's interesting. That was his conception.
Yes.
But people misunderstood him in Pondicherry. There were riots in 1947. Because what? You don't want Pondicherry to merge into the Indian Union? What sort of a man are you? Where is your nationalism? But that's not what he meant. He meant it can be more than a nationalistic thing. There are a lot of misunderstanding about that. So anyway, we come back to our text. So, he is no longer, but illusion which can be overcome, or at least a temporary, wrong self-experience, Maya. It is tempting to regard it as only a contradiction of the divine. This is what the Mayavadins and the Buddhists are doing. Okay. Also, there are many other philosophies. Okay. There is the Mani. Mani was the philosopher in
Manichaean.
Iran. Manichaeism.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that is another. There is the divine and there is the non-divine below. So if you want the divine, you have to go up there. It is tempting to regard it only as a contradiction of the divine. An incomprehensible mystery play, mask. Know the spelling? M-A-S-Q-U-E. It's not M-A-S-K. So mask is a drama which is enacted with masks on. The actors have masks on. So it's a sort of play. Or travesty. Travesty is a ironical, I'll tell you. The exact word is a charade, okay? Or a burlesque comedy, mockery, making fun of something. So the physical world is making fun of the divine. I am real. You are thinking it, but I am actually not real. So it is a mockery of the infinite. So it irresistibly seems to his experience at times. On the one side, the luminous verity of Brahman. On the other, a dark illusion of Maya. This happens in the spiritual planes of consciousness when you have not yet stabilized yourself there. Even if you have stabilized yourself there, you see both. You see spirit and matter. When you go to the third level, you see both as one. Okay? So, but something in him will not allow him to cut existence thus permanently in two. And looking more closely, he discovers that in this half light or darkness too, there is the eternal. It is the Brahman who is here with his face of Maya. So behind the forms, there is the divine presence. And when he's saying something in him will not, who is the him? He's talking of his own experience. Because in Life Divine he says very clearly, when I had the experience of the silent mind, I did not jump to conclusions like the Mayavadin or the Buddhist that the world is unreal. Yes, I am seeing the world as unreal, but I'll wait and see. I'm not going to jump to conclusions. And then he found that that emptiness started filling up with light, with knowledge, with ananda. So for him, he was very patient, and he was saying, the others are not patient. They are experiencing the peace and freedom, very satisfied. Let the world go. What does it matter? The world is, in any case, my body is going to disappear. I am pure consciousness. I am not the body. So I don't care. That's a Mayavadin. Okay? So, we go to the next para.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of a growing spiritual experience which reveals to him more and more that what seemed to him dark, incomprehensible Maya was all the time no other than the consciousness puissance of the eternal, timeless and illimitable, beyond the universe, but spread out here under a mask of bright and dark opposites for the miracle of the slow manifestation of the divine in mind and life and matter. All the timeless presses towards the play in time. All in time turns upon and around the timeless spirit. If the separate experience was liberative, this unitive experience is dynamic and effective. For he now not only feels himself to be in his soul's substance, part of the eternal, in his essential self and spirit, entirely one with the eternal, but in his active nature, an instrumentation of its omniscient and omnipotent consciousness puissance. However bounded and relative its present play in him, he can open to a greater and greater consciousness and power of it, and to that expansion there seems to be no assignable limit. A level spiritual and supramental of that consciousness puissance seems even to reveal itself above him and lean to enter into contact where there are not these trammels and limits, and its powers too are pressing upon the play in time with the promise of a greater descent and a less disguised or no longer disguised manifestation of the eternal. The once conflicting but now biune duality of Brahman Maya stands revealed to him as the first great dynamic aspect of the self of all, the self of all selves, the master of existence, the Lord of the world's sacrifice and of his sacrifice. So, he is talking of the supermind, okay, in a very guarded language. So, we'll see. Level 1, level 2, level 3. He is now describing level 3. Okay, so this is the beginning of a growing spiritual experience. He is in level 2. He is in a spiritual consciousness. He has experienced the Nirvana consciousness in Baroda. He comes to Pondicherry in 1910, okay, and he goes on concentrating. He had no work to do. He has been put into Pondicherry. The work of political work of freedom of India is gone. That has been passed on to others. You don't have to worry about it. Sri Krishna told him, come to Pondicherry and do sadhana. That's your work. So, 1910 to 1926. How many years? 16 years he is trying to stabilize his consciousness. And it stabilizes at the overmind level. Overmind is the highest plane of the level 2. In level 2, the lowest is higher mind. Then there is a 11 mind, intuitive mind and overmind. So 1926, overmind consciousness. Now he understands that this is not yet the supermind. So he withdraws from all activity because he wants to isolate himself and remain pure and not be affected by, but this is temporary. Okay? He is recommending that you should not consider the physical world as unreal. He is not considering unreal, but the forces that come from there will dilute his work. So he has separated himself. And concentration, walking, day after day, only walking. 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, walking and concentrating. And there are beautiful experience of a doctor who is seeing him walking, but he is not conscious. Mother is there talking with the doctor, but he is going on walking, as though unconscious of all these people. And mother had called him to, I'm talking about doctor, okay, who mother had called, mother had called the doctor because Sri Aurobindo had some skin rashes, looked like skin rashes on this side. So mother had called the doctor to find out what it was all about. So this doctor is puzzled. How can I tell Sri Aurobindo to sit down, I want to examine you? He can't do that. So he starts walking along with Sri Aurobindo. Walking, what she is doing. It's there in Mother India. It's a big article. 2 articles. So then he found out that Sri Aurobindo is absolutely unconscious of the physical world and talking and knocking into furniture. And those are the knockings from the furniture. So he told mother confidently, this is not a skin problem. It is just he is knocking into furniture. That's why. So he is walking along with him to see what's happening. And Sri Aurobindo is continuing with his concentration. Eyes open, but consciousness somewhere else. Going on walking. So after that, 16 years, he realized the overmind level. So this is what he was doing at that time. So fantastic. So in that period, sometimes you are seeing here, sometimes you are seeing. Spirit and matter both exist, but they are separate. Okay? So that's what he's describing now. Growing consciousness. So growing consciousness, going from higher mind to eleven mind to intuitive mind to overmind. And then 1926, it gets stabilized.
And that's when Krishna came into him.
Who?
Krishna.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Krishna actually descended into his body.
And Dada,
not in his mind or vital.
Dada thought it was supermind, but he said no.
That's right. It's not supermind. He realized that it's not yet the supermind.
Yeah.
So to hurry up that work, another 24 years, he went.
Yeah.
Better. 1926, 36, 46, 1950. 24 years. And that also, the work was not done. So he told mother, you have to complete the work. I will be working in the subtle world. He goes there. He didn't say that, but that's what they did. He went into the subtle world and mother continued the work here, trying to change her body and pulling down the supermind. But 6 years after Sri Aurobindo left, 1956, mother was able to bring down the supermind. So now what we see in the physical world is only a huge confusion because the new is fighting with the old. And the old is insisting on still remaining. That's why there's confusion in the world today. So this beautiful description of the rising to the supermind. This is the beginning of a growing spiritual experience, okay, which reveals to him more and more. It's a gradual thing, more and more, gradual. That what seemed to him dark, incomprehensible Maya, the physical world, was all the time no other than the consciousness puissance. So I'm using very interesting word. Suddenly he switches to puissance and not Shakti. Chit Shakti. Chit is Purusha, Shakti is Prakriti. Spirit and matter. They seem to be different, but it's all the time, it's only the Chit Shakti which is together of the eternal. Timeless and illimitable beyond the universe. Okay? Beyond the universe, timeless and eternal, but spread out here under the mask of bright and dark opposites for the miracle of a slow manifestation of the divine in mind, life and matter. So, there it is, timeless and eternal, always perfect, static. But here in the physical world, it is under the mask of bright and dark opposites. There is consciousness and there is also unconsciousness. And what is the purpose? The miracle of a slow manifestation of the divine in mind, life and matter. One word for the miracle of the slow manifestation of the divine in mind, life and matter, evolution, which is not there in Buddhism, it is not there in Mayavada philosophy.
Not even there in Christianity in the West.
No.
No.
So he discovers that there is an evolution and the divine is slowly revealing himself here. It has already revealed himself in 3 steps: matter, life and mind. So why should it stop there? The next station is the supermind.
And this is all autobiographical.
Yes, absolutely. When he's saying he meaning himself.
Himself, yes.
Okay, so, but spread out. So, very clear. This dichotomy between spirit and matter is for the play of manifestation. I am going to reveal myself here slowly over the ages. That's what he's saying. Okay, so all the timeless presses towards the play in time. All in time turns upon and around the timeless spirit. He's putting in different words, but what he's saying is that the divine is always trying to guide the lower, and the lower is always aspiring for the higher. Even the animal, there is a hidden aspiration for the higher. Even when man is not pursuing a spiritual life, there is an aspiration in him in the inner life. The psychic being is aspiring, which he comes to know afterwards. He realizes that. Okay, so there is a pressure from above and there is an aspiration from below. This is what makes the evolution possible. The help is always there, but the call must come from here. So that is also there. If the separate experience was liberative, this unitive experience is dynamic, effective. What does he mean by that? When I am in level 2 of the spiritual planes of consciousness, I am seeing that I am in a consciousness of Sat Chit Ananda. But I am seeing that my body, mind, life, which belongs to level 1, I am not able to change it. I can change it a little bit, but I can't change it entirely. But when I am going to the 3rd level, unitive experience, I have the power now to change this also. That's what he's saying. Okay, I read that slowly again. Okay, if the separative experience was liberative, level 2, you have been liberated. This unitive experience, Purusha and Prakriti become one, consciousness and position become one, spirit and matter become one. Unitive experience, okay, is dynamic and effective. So what is meant by dynamic and effective? Now you have the power to change your mind and life and even body to a certain extent. That's the work that Mother was engaged in. She didn't finish the work because the time was not ripe for it. For everything, there is a time. The world conditions must be able to sustain the incoming force. Very easy example I'll give you. Okay, Leonardo da Vinci conceived of heavier than air machines, flying machines. Took 400 years to become a reality. So Mother is now conceiving of the spiritual, the body being transformed. It will take another 200, 300 years for it to become a reality. But she has finished most of the work. According to George Wreckham, the work has been completed up to the subtle physical. It now only needs to precipitate itself into the physical. Sridhar has spoken about this. In the Supramental Manifestation, in that book, which he wrote, Mother asked him to write, it's quite a big book. So, it's not a book, it's a series of articles. It has never come out as, a book. It's part of the book. There is Supramental Manifestation upon earth. Okay. So, there he says that this change of the body could occur in many ways. He says it could be prepared up to the subtle physical, and then it could be precipitated, materialized into the physical world. So Mother has done much of the work already. So the next precipitation, when it will occur, we have to wait and see. Okay, so it's dynamic and effective. For he now not only feels himself to be in his soul substance, part of the eternal, I am the divine. He can feel that in his soul substance, in his essential self and spirit, entirely one with the eternal. But in his active nature, what is that? His body, mind, life. He is an instrumentation of the omniscient and omnipotent consciousness force. It's not a dull, ignorant collection of body, mind, and life. No, it is not. It has become an instrumentation for divine work in the world. That's a supramental experience. However bounded and relative its present play in him, he can open to a greater and greater consciousness and power of it, and to that expansion there seems to be no assignable limit. Okay, he can keep going higher and higher and higher, and wider and wider and wider. A level spiritual and supramental of that consciousness puissance seems even to reveal itself above him and lean to enter into contact where there are not these trammels and limits. So now he is saying that in the spiritual consciousness also at the highest level, you can perceive these things. Okay. Now he is saying that even above that, now he is talking of the supermind. Okay. So,
that it wants to lean into him.
yeah.
It's the feeling.
Yeah. He was experiencing the supermind all the time. But it was not stabilized in him. There are people who say that it got stabilized, but I don't think that that's correct. Because if it was stabilized, he could have even changed his body. But that didn't happen. Okay. So, yeah. A level, now, look at the words carefully. A level, spiritual and supramental, of that consciousness puissance seems even to reveal itself above him and lean to enter into contact where there are not these trammels and limits. Trammels and limits, the physical world. So in the supermind, there is no problem at all which exists in the physical world. That's what he's saying. Okay? And its powers too are pressing upon the play in time with the promise of a greater descent. That's the supermind. And a less disguised and no longer disguised manifestation of the eternal. So, which is, I'll give you one word for this one. A greater descent, supramental descent. And a less disguised or no longer disguised manifestation of the eternal. No longer disguised manifestation of the eternal, the supramental race. Less disguised, the overman. Less disguised, the overman. Mother said afterwards that there will be a intermediary being between the human being, the yogi, and the supramental being. That will be the overman. So look at the language, so clear. Okay, he's saying a greater descent, that is the supramental descent, and a less disguised or no longer disguised manifestation. The supramental body will be absolutely, there will be no disguise at all. It will be immortal. It will have no ignorance at all. So no disguise at all, and less disguised, the overmind consciousness. The overman, the word overman is
Suram.
George Breckham's invention.
Suram.
Yeah, le suram. She used the French word, suram. So the overman was invented by George Breckham. And some people object to it. But it's okay. He's expressing himself. He's translating the suram, the overman. Okay, so this is how Sri Aurobindo is foreseen all this. Mother spoke about the suram much afterwards, much later.
Yeah.
But he is already speaking of it in the synthesis. So, the once conflicting but now biune duality of Brahman Maya stands revealed to him as the first great dynamic aspect of the self, of all selves, the master of existence, the Lord of the world sacrifice and of his sacrifice. Now, when he is talking of master of existence, Lord, he is saying he is a personal aspect of the divine. And that's in the supermind. In the spiritual plane of consciousness, in the level 2, you have the impersonal aspect of the divine. You have a state of peace, calm, freedom, maybe even joy, but there is nobody there. But in this third level, you have the Lord, you have the master of existence, and he is at the third level. And at the third level, you can see him in a form you want to see him in, and he is also impersonal and personal at the same time. That's why he's saying.
And when he writes, and of his sacrifice,
Yes.
it's Sri Aurobindo's sacrifice.
Yes. The Lord of the world sacrifice and of his sacrifice. That's right. So, fantastic prose. Yeah. And so clear he is expressing himself. We stop here today?
I think so, yes. Mm-hmm.